My name's Melanie James, and some of you on here know me, and some of you don't. I want to introduce myself and take just a minute for that because some of you found my channel by searching for seamless videos, and I uploaded those when we did that Bible study a while back, and I couldn't find them all like in one place. So we pieced that together and uploaded those for our study. So I'm glad that some of you have found that and are able to enjoy that. This is a video about homeschooling. I had put a Facebook post on my page a while back and asked if anybody would be interested in a video about homeschooling. And I thought I might just do something talking about our first month of homeschooling. Several people said they would be interested in seeing that, but I just haven't gotten around to it. So today I was making some notes about what I would say in that video, and it seemed like I kind of needed to do several different shorter videos because otherwise it's just going to be one super long video. So for this first one, I wanted to talk about why did we decide to homeschool. And it's kind of funny because after I wrote this down and decided that's what I was going to do first, today at my kids' piano lesson, the piano teacher, his teacher, has been homeschooling for a while, and she asked me that at the end of the lesson. We were talking about something about homeschooling, I think field trips, and she said, let me just ask you, if you don't mind, why did you decide to homeschool? And I've been asked that question a lot, actually. So I thought, okay, that's definitely the video that I need to do today. If I wasn't sure before, I am now. So why did we decide to homeschool? Well, there's not just one cut and dry answer for that. A little bit of background on me and my family. I was publicly educated, kindergarten all the way through high school. I went to public school. I became a public school teacher. Straight out of high school, I went to college in my hometown. I knew I wanted to be an elementary school teacher. I've taught for 17 years. I taught public schools, and I taught grades kindergarten, first, third, and fourth. I think that's it. And most of that time was spent teaching fourth grade. That was kind of my jam. That was my favorite grade to teach, but I did like all of them. So anyway, that's my background. My oldest kids, I have 4 kids. My 2 oldest are practically adults. One is and one is almost. My 18-year-old is a freshman in college this year at the same college I went to. And she was public school all the way through, from kindergarten to 12th grade. She graduated last year at our local high school, the same high school I graduated from in 1997. And then my son, he's 17, and he is a senior this year at that same high school, so he'll graduate in May. Then my younger 2 boys, one is 12 and one is 9. Okay, so this is where the story gets a little more complicated. So public school life was just rocking along. And then about 6 years ago, I guess it was, maybe 7 now. I feel like I've been saying 6 years for a year or so it might be 7 or 8 now. But a little while back, my husband and I have always gone to church since we were married. We both got saved as kids. But it was never like the number one priority in our life or in our heart. We put a lot of things before our faith and our relationship with Christ. And so that all started to change a few years ago for both of us. I'm really glad that the timing was pretty parallel. So we both just began feeling like God was calling us into something deeper. And long story short, he answered the call to preach. We started teaching at our church. We got involved with youth ministry there. We started having Bible studies in our home. I even hosted some women's Bible studies, and I'm really kind of a shy person in larger crowds, so that was like way out of my comfort zone. But God just started waking us up in a lot of cool ways. And when he does that, though, sometimes he causes you to be uncomfortable with the status quo. It's like all of a sudden you've been following along with everybody else and just going with the flow and going with the crowd, and then all of a sudden God just, jerks you around. You do a complete about face, and you see things the way you've never seen them before, and you feel things in your heart that you've never felt before. And this was what happened with us. We started feeling at that time Like some of the things that we were seeing in public education, especially at the secondary level, were very, very against what we believe, very against what Scripture teaches, and just things that we felt like break the heart of God, that kids were being taught, our kids. One day in particular, I can remember my daughter came home and told me that in social studies she had been reading out of the Quran that day, and that they read the story of Abraham and Isaac, and that afterwards a lot of the kids said, hey, this is just like the Bible, so Allah and God really are the same, they just call them different names. And I was like, what? No. And of course my daughter knew that was wrong too. But long story short, it was written into the Tennessee, that's where we live, Tennessee curriculum standards. It was written in there to teach Islam from a very positive light, like the contributions of Muhammad, the contributions of Islam. It had them learning about the 5 tenets of Islam, and about Sharia law and things like that. I mean, I was shocked. But the justification for that by the administrators and teachers were, well, that's what the standards say, and that's what we have to teach. So that's just one example. In that instance, we had a meeting with the principal and other heads of the department, and they allowed my daughter to sit out when that was being taught and to do an alternate lesson. And it's not that we're afraid that she'll learn about Islam. We teach about other religions of the world and even other denominations within the Christian faith. But it was more that we didn't agree with the way it was being taught. And when we asked if they teach Christianity also, since they're teaching world religions in school, they said yes, but we don't teach about Jesus. So I'm not sure how they managed to teach about Christianity without Jesus Christ. I think those standards have changed since then. I think they actually do teach about Jesus now, but not any differently than they teach about other religious leaders. I think they kind of put them all on the same playing field, which can lead to religious pluralism, many roads to God, that kind of thinking. So anyway, so we started to notice things that we didn't like in their curriculum. But at that time, teaching was my career. I didn't think that I could do something else. Homeschool was not on my radar. I'll just say that. My husband did mention it to me. He thought that I could, or that maybe we should consider it. But at the time, my heart wasn't there yet. It was on its way, but it wasn't there yet. And so when he suggested homeschooling, I thought, there's no way we could do that. That would be overwhelming. They would be socially awkward, all the things that are myths about homeschool life. That's, I say myths, it's not true at all. But just things that people believe, stereotypes that people believe who haven't been in a homeschool community before. So anyway, I was right in there, thinking all those things. And I liked teaching. I liked having my classroom of students and just that brand new school year. I think I was a good teacher, and I loved my students, and it was definitely the calling for my life at that time. But God changed my heart. So, fast forward. Started showing us some things. And then I have a son my middle son, has special needs educationally. And typically when people think of special needs, they think of struggling students with disabilities or different abilities. Students maybe who struggle with ADHD or dyslexia, and all those things are real, and I've had many students in my class who struggle with those. But his struggle was something that I didn't even know what to do about. He's gifted, and that sounds like, oh yeah, a big problem, but it really kind of is. You have to redirect a lot of things educationally when you have a student who gets it and doesn't have to work hard to get it and doesn't have to study. They tend to get bored sometimes. They tend to get, they blurt out. They are more, I don't know what the right word is here, but there are issues with behavior in the classroom, and issues with not being challenged, and different problems that come from just feeling like you don't fit in, and he definitely felt like he didn't fit in. we grade skipped him when he was in, so he got tested as gifted in kindergarten, and we knew something was different by then because he started reading when he was about 2.5, and he knew all of his letters and sounds when he was 18 months old. So there was a lot that we knew wasn't typical. We had 2 older children who were bright students, and they did well in school, but this knew we were dealing with something different. This wasn't just your typical good student. And so when he was tested, they said, okay, here's the chart, and he's way off the chart over here. So they continued with the regular course of education through 1st grade, but then when he went into 2nd grade, but he was only in 2nd grade for about a week, and he was wilting, and his scores were showing that too. He wasn't making a full year's gain, which is in public school how they measure growth. You're supposed to, if you start off in kindergarten reading on a 2.5 grade level, which is what he did, then at the end of kindergarten you should have 3.5. And it's harder to show gains when you're already way up there. So this is what was happening. He was gradually doing worse and worse. So when he was in 2nd grade for about a week, he came to me one day after school, and he was so frustrated, super frustrated, because there was a online math program, and he had already mastered addition, multiplication, subtraction, and I think he was working on division, or he might have been somewhere on multiplication and division. But anyway, they put him back on addition, which public schools are like this. A lot of times they have to do a one-size-fits-all in a way. Now, there are exceptions for if you're teaching kids who need more help, and they need some type of intervention is what we call it. But with kids who are excelling and doing well, there's very often no adjustment made for that. And as a teacher myself, I struggled with that. I didn't know how to adjust for that. I had a lot of really bright kids come through my classroom who I didn't sufficiently challenge, and I didn't give them hard enough and engaging enough work. So I'm not saying that I blame the teachers for that. I certainly don't. It's something that needs a lot more discussion and how to work on that and develop that, because I don't think that gifted kids are being served very well in a public school system. But how to fix that, I don't really know. I can identify the problem, but I don't know any solutions. So anyway, so he had skipped a grade, and this put him with kids who were older. And this has been a problem socially. And several teachers warned me that that would happen and said, you don't want to do this. I know academically he'll be fine, but maturity-wise and just being around older kids all the time, bad idea. Well, they were right. I still don't think it would have been right to keep him in the grade based on his age either, because he was just wilting. But it wasn't, skipping had problems too. So either way, there are problems. Pick your poison, which is the lesser of the evils. I don't know. We prayed about it, and we went with skipping grades. And it was fine through elementary school. Fast forward, we started feeling like maybe the problems with public school started to increase at the secondary level with my kids who were in middle school and then high school. And we saw more and more issues. And my husband became really just irritated at the public school system. He was really very discerning about some of the areas it was headed that have come to be true. And he said, that we well, no, it was my idea first. I take that back. I started feeling like maybe we should do private Christian school for the kids. The younger two. The biggest reason that middle son who was about to go into middle school, he would have been, because of his grade skip, he would have been going into middle school as a young 10-year-old, barely 10. He had a late summer birthday anyway, so he was young anyway, and then when we skipped him, he was real young. So he would have been barely 10 going into middle school. I think that's right. I might do the math later and be like, oh, that was wrong. But anyway, I just thought that's going to be disastrous. He's not ready for middle school. In middle school, they learn so much. I remember when I was in middle school, it was awful. So, and from my own kids' experience and what they've told me, it was awful. still is. So I knew he wouldn't be ready for public ed middle school. So started praying about that and felt like maybe Christian school was an option. But at that time, we were just thinking about putting them in a Christian school, not me going there. Well, as it would turn out, I'll leave out the details, but there's a lot of details and a lot of cool ways that God showed us where to go and things that the school offered that were just amazing and awesome. And so the only way to get them into that school would be if I taught there too. There'd be no way transportation-wise, because the school was about a 30-minute drive from our house. So it's 30 minutes there in the morning, 30 minutes home in the afternoon. And I couldn't do that and then get back to school and teach where I taught, which is just 5 minutes down the road. So, it's super convenient just to stay at the school we were at. My youngest had just completed kindergarten, so he only did 1 year of public school when we moved to private. But anyway, so I interviewed for a job there. Didn't really think I would get it because I had no experience with Christian education, private education. I didn't know anyone at the school, and no one knew me, so I was a total outsider. So I thought, well, I'm not going to get a job. But I did. They offered me a job teaching there, and so just another confirmation that this was part of God's plan. And so we left public school. I took a huge pay cut and lost benefits and insurance and all that, but we just took a leap of faith, trusting that God would work out all those details, and He did. He was very faithful in that, as He has been in this homeschool move this year. So, fast forward, why did we move from private school to homeschool? This has turned out to be a lot longer than I'm sorry. I thought it would be like 10 minutes, and here we are counting away. I said TikTok. Counting away over 16. So, sorry about that. But anyway, so why did we switch from private to public? Well, the being with older kids was starting to really, my middle son was at an age where it was starting to really impact his spirituality, his heart, his feelings. A lot of days he would come in after school and just be upset over something that had happened in the school day. And that probably happens with kids everywhere, in public setting, private setting, everywhere. But I was starting to see it having a real impact on him and having a real effect on his heart. And as a mother, it was like breaking my heart. Many days we left in tears, including me, in tears. Just things that had been said to him, done to him, slights that he perceived that may not have even been true, just his perception. But it was taking a major toll on his emotional well-being, and therefore mine. So, started thinking then, okay, but God, you sent us here, so what's next? Well, I have a lot of friends now who homeschool. At the time, I knew very few homeschool moms. But through that private school experience, met people who either homeschooled in the past or who did a hybrid and did some of the private school and then some homeschooling. Or maybe they left the private school too, exclusively homeschool. So I met a lot of homeschool moms through that. And they got to share their experiences, and most of them truly loved it and would go back to it if not for one factor or another. Many who weren't homeschooling, who had before, said they preferred homeschooling, but for one reason or another couldn't anymore, but they loved it. And so anyway, and I also learned about classical curriculum. That is the curriculum that they used at the school we went to. The private school was a classical Christian school, and I didn't know much about that before, but I started to learn a lot about that by teaching it and being in that environment where classical was the method of teaching. And so that was another reason that I think God had us there. It would have been really hard to transition from public school straight to homeschool with no knowledge of classical education, with very little knowledge of like how to budget with significantly less income. It was a step down, and then homeschool, no income for me, that's another big step down. But it was like we gradually worked our way into that. That's the way I like to get in a pool. I don't just jump in. I have to slowly come down the steps. And so it was kind of that way with our educational choices. Now, my youngest son, you might be wondering how he has dealt with being from public school to private school to now homeschool. He has things that he likes and dislikes about all three of the settings. Of course, he remembers very little about public school because he was only in kindergarten. But nonetheless, he does have some memories of that. He misses, obviously, friends and being with his friends all day. But the two of them, even though there's an age gap, they've always been very close as brothers and really get along and play well together and like the same things. And so that's been a blessing because he's got that built-in best friend 24/7. So I imagine without his brother, it would be a lot lonelier for him even than it is. But we did join a co-op. Every Friday we meet with other kids. So he does have that experience. And then we go places sometimes too. We're going to the pumpkin patch on Friday. We've been to the Mercier Apple Orchard in Blue Ridge, Georgia, and with another family that homeschools. So they do get to be around other kids. Granted, not as much as in a school setting, but it's not like they're not socialized. And of course, they're around other kids at church and in other places too, with family and cousins. So they do have other relationships with kids. So I think I got off track a little bit there. But yeah, so why did we homeschool? So those were the biggest factors. It was my son's needs and his emotional well-being, and I just thought he would really flourish in homeschool setting, and he has. He loves the freedom to pick when he does what subject. He can kind of rearrange his schedule just based on how he's feeling. He loves being able to discuss different ideas with me when he's reading a book. He's really self-motivated, so he really likes to work hard, get his things finished, do some of his own interests and things. He has a lot of neat little interests, and he gets to do that with homeschooling because I let them make a lot of decisions on how they manage their time and what they want to learn about and things like that. And so let me make sure I got all of the notes. Yeah, and then I said earlier that God had to change my heart and make me ready for that, and he did. He gave me just this growing desire to be at home more as I've gotten older. When I was younger and the kids were younger, I felt like we had to just go all the time, always be on the run, doing something. But as I've gotten older, I enjoy being home. I enjoy cleaning and cooking even, dare I say, more than I used to. Everybody who knows me knows I'm not a cook. My daughter's the chef of the house, but I've been cooking a lot more since we've been homeschooling, and I love it. I love just lighting some candles and putting some music on in the background. We watch all those YouTube videos of like soft music with a cool fall scene or whatever, just to set the ambiance, and we really love that. Even the boys do. They like classical music like all day. We have that in the background somewhere. And so that's just been really nice, and it's been really like peace-filling and joy-filling, F-I-L-L-I-N-G, not feeling. It fills me with that, to know that I'm here with them, investing in them, one-on-one with them, face-to-face, side-by-side, just getting a lot more time in with my boys. And even, ironically, with my older kids, even though they're off at school, I'm here for them if they need something. I'm here to tell them goodbye in the morning, fix them breakfast if they need it, be here when they call or text. If they need anything, I'm, accessible to them all the time. And so that's nice too. So those are some of the reasons that we homeschooled. Even though I left some things out, it's like 24 minutes long and counting. So I think I'm going to cut it off now. But if you have any questions or want any more info, I could talk a ton more about the growing liberalism and things that they're sneaking in the curriculum at the high school level. I could give you lots more examples and things that we're seeing and things we've had to do, meetings we've had to have, and yeah, and it's just going to get worse. So talking to another parent who doesn't have the same specific needs that my family has and my children, I would say that's the biggest reason to consider homeschooling for someone else, would be what they're teaching in schools, especially at the secondary level. I think the curriculum I think there is an embedded agenda, definitely, and I've seen proof of that So, yeah, I think that's something to be cautious of. And you can still have those conversations with your kids and teach them to be, watchful of those things and be prepared for that in public school. And, if you aren't able to homeschool or do private school and your child is a Christian who must go to a public school, there are ways to prevent some of the potential pitfalls of that for your child. But the first step is to be aware of them. So do some research, do some homework on what those potential pitfalls are for Christian kids and Christian families, and know that there is no neutrality. That neutrality is a myth. Look that up. But that just, I don't mean to be condescending. I'm sure you know what that means. But to me, what that means is a lot of things try to be passed off as, oh, it's fine. Oh, we were fine. Oh, there's nothing bad about this. It's either for God or against God. And public schools today are not for God. So that's just something to be aware of. All right, anyway, I've dragged on long enough. Dragged. So I'll go on that note, but I'll make another video soon. Some more that I want to do are, how did I plan before the school year? How did I choose the curriculum that we chose, and what curriculum are we using? What does a typical homeschool day look like? A little bit of info. Maybe I'll make a video about our homeschool Bible study that we use to start the day. We've done 2 different things so far because we finished one and moved on to a different thing. And then maybe just some pros and cons of homeschooling, because it's not all sunshine and roses. There are some cons for sure. But one more thing on that note. It's not like the March 2020 quarantine homeschool that many of us were forced into. That scared me into thinking I could never do homeschool, because that experience was awful. But I was still trying to teach my 4th graders. I was trying to help my 2 kids. It was like we were all thrown into that situation, and it was just nuts. So, homeschooling is not like that at all. Thank goodness. So, have a blessed evening. Thanks for watching. If you hung in there till the end especially. All right, bye.